This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. World building is an important part of making films, creating an environment where the characters live and breathe. In the Oscar-nominated film Hamnet, we are taken back to the 16th century of England when a young couple lives, loves, and then grieves the death of their son. The couple is the Shakespeares, Anya and Will, and they experience the loss quite differently. From lush gardens to the bustling Globe Theatre, Oscar-nominated production designer Fiona Crombie created these worlds using detail and a bit of imagination. Crombie is known for her diverse work on films like Cruella, Mickey 17, and The Favourite. She was nominated for that film too. This year, she has earned her second nomination for Hamnet, and Fiona Crombie joins us now as part of our series, The Big Picture, where we recognize talent behind the camera. Hi, Fiona.
Hi.
I gave my quick understanding of what a production designer does, but you're the expert. How do you explain what production designers do?
Do you know, I do it really simply by saying, if you imagine a frame of film, like just a scene in a film, the production designer is across the location or the set build, but so it's the broad, big picture, and then it's the tiny details. So we're involved in the food that's on a plate or the cutlery, the color of the curtains, the carpet, as well as the actual architecture, or it could be landscape even. So it could be the animals. I mean, I'm talking about animals sometimes. So it's basically everything that's in a frame that's not an actor, not a costume, not hair and makeup.
When a production designer has done a good job objectively, how does it help the film?
I think what it does is it wordlessly informs the audience about, could be just the backstory of a character or the circumstances. Production design can make you feel something that just isn't said. So that's what it can do, really. It can kind of just offer more. Yeah.
So the first time you read Hamnet was to take it in, to take the story in. But when you read it again and began to think about the work you would do on it, what came to your mind? What did you see?
I think for me, I always am pretty quick with responses. I think I felt very much that there was a contrast between this kind of rambling nature and this sort of untethered quality of the character of Agnes, and then the structure of Tudor architecture. Like immediately I felt there was a potential with the kind of the contrast of, the really linear graphic architecture and the heavy ceilings, and what it would feel for somebody who is comfortable outside to decide to come inside. Things like that. But also crucially for me, I was really struck by the depiction of family and the kind of the way that I related to it, even though it's obviously a story set centuries ago. I kept thinking of my family, my children, my mess, my life. And I was like, how do I bring that into a period film?
It's interesting because your job has so much to do. You have to decide what size beds will be in a scene and where cobblestones will go in the yard and what kind of stones those will be. There's just a lot to consider. Where did you start with Hamnet? What was your first thing you focused on?
I always do like a kind of a two-pronged approach. So I'll go historical accuracy and I'll understand what it was. And then I'll do like an emotional response. So it's just gathering images from all over the place, can be, paintings or photography or colors. It can, anything that feels like it's sort of resonating what I'm instinctively feeling about the script. And then I'll see where they come together and where they meet. And I'll see what repeats itself. Like, what do I keep finding myself drawn to? And then at the same time as I'm doing that, in the case of Hamnet, we were also location scouting. So we were going around and looking at a bunch of buildings with the idea that we would shoot on location, which didn't come to fruition. We ended up building our sets. But doing that, I was understanding the spaces and feeling how people lived. And so it was hugely informative with our set builds, was just spending time in buildings.
My guest is Fiona Crombie, the Oscar-nominated production designer for Hamnet. This is part of our Big Picture series recognizing the talent behind the camera this Oscar season. What conversations did you have with director Chloe Zhao?
Do you know the thing that was really interesting, and I hadn't really clocked this early on, is that what I did when I met with Chloe was I prepared a run of images that for me illustrated the tone of the film and the sort of themes and ideas that I was thinking of. And I sent that to her before we met. And she really connected with it. And so in some ways, we didn't have to have masses of
Hmm.
conversations. We sort of arrived with at the start of the project with the kind of understanding. And then for her, having it feel authentic and like grounded and I don't know, embedded was very important. So authenticity is hugely important to Chloe. So anything artificial or overdone was just no, we're not doing that. We want to kind of keep it precise, and personal the whole way through.
Chloe Gla- Chloe Zhao says that she brings people together, quote, who have a certain instinct.
Mm.
What instinct served you well on Hamnet?
Oh, I think I love detail. So I'm
Detail.
always, like searching for what I can tell, what I can tell through an object. And I think also we were really keen for it to feel very, like I say, real, even though obviously it's a film. So we did, I don't know, we brought in lots of really textured elements, like we used reclaimed timbers and we used vintage fabrics. But I think the big thing was about trying to loosen it up, so it didn't feel like a documentary or it didn't feel like we were kind of like standing back admiring period sets. It was the opposite. It was trying to bring the audience right next to the family when they're sitting at the table, and I wanted them to be in amongst everything and for there to be kind of the real sense of the daily life of a family felt very, very important to me. And so that is probably what it was that, I was bringing.
Is the film cast when you come aboard?
Yeah, not everybody, but I
Okay.
knew that it was Paul and Jesse. Yeah.
How does the cast make a difference in the work you do? Because I'm thinking about how physical Jessie Buckley is,
Mm.
especially in this film. Did you take that into account?
Yeah, it does actually make a difference. It's a bit strange when you start a project and you don't have that character because, or the lead, or the person, because you do think about spaces and, I don't know, I do think about that. And I knew, um, I think it's also really like it makes such a difference when you see them in costume and hair and makeup and
Hmm.
seeing the transformation. It was incredible. Jessie, she arrived. She had bleach blonde hair and no eyebrows because she just finished The Bride. And
Oh
within
my gosh.
24 hours, she was freckled and she had this long dark hair. And like that became Jessie, because she was always hanging around between takes. And then I remember seeing her at a breakfast line and she didn't have her hair. And I thought, oh, who's that? Like I totally like had decided that Jessie was the person with the, Jessie was Agnes. And it was so brilliant. And so yeah, and working with her and like doing, we did foraging workshops and she,
Oh.
she played with all her props so that she could really work with, knew how to create, compresses and do various things. So she really gets into it. She wanted to understand it.
Yeah, I'm sort of interested in sort of the rough hew nature of the material you had to work with, whether it be the wood or the burlap, how that played into your production design.
Yeah, texture is very important. I mean, for me, it was the thing was when we decided to build the set, particularly, we always knew we were going to build the Globe, but when we decided to build the Hamlet house, why am I saying Hamlet? It's
Henry
because
Street
I'm
home,
tired.
right? Yeah.
Sorry. You know what I'm
I know what
saying?
you mean.
Yeah, the Shakespeare house, I should say. Um, it was only 9 weeks. We had 9 weeks. It was very, very fast to build this enormous house with, a full backyard and everything. And so using the reclaimed timbers and we chose props that had history. Might have a break. They might be repaired. There was just a decision to find anything that brought a story or history into the set build And I think it made the most enormous difference for us. It's like every plant that's in the garden is old. It's got some little dead bits and like it's leggy. It's kind of, rambling. All of those things, I think, helped. It contributed to just taking it and making it feel embedded in a way that it's really hard to just do with new materials. And so, yeah, it was a very good decision, and that came kind of late, but it absolutely informed the film, I think.
My guest is Fiona Crombie, the Oscar nominated production designer for Hamnet. All right, let's talk about the Globe. The original Globe Theater burned. There's a theater on the original site. What was important to you about getting what was important to you about getting right about the Globe? And then what was important to you about being able to use your imagination about the Globe?
Well, what was important was actually just the sense of like there being this well, the circular shape for a start. I mean, ours is smaller, like it's 70% of the real scale. And what I really wanted to do was I wanted it to have a simplicity. When we went to visit the globe that stands today, which, as you say, is actually the later globe, there's a grandeur. There's marble columns and gold capitals, and it felt like a next phase, absolutely, than the globe that we wanted to create, which it should feel like it's the beginning of something. And it also needed to feel linked to the aesthetic of the story that we've been telling, and the forest particularly. And that was Chloe's direction to me. She said, I want it to feel like the inside of a tree. And so the idea of the circular, looking up to the sky through a circle, we were always going to honor the shape of the globe and the look of the exterior. But when it came to the interior, the significant deviation is that we put the painted backdrop onto the stage, which, our understanding is that, that was something that was starting in Italy at the time, but it would not have been in the UK or in England. And, and also we changed the orientation of the side of stage. That would not have been there. He would not have been sitting there with access to the stage that way. He would have been up higher on another level. But those changes are about informing story. We wanted him to be closer and to be able to see Agnes in the audience, and most importantly, we wanted to have our forest brought to the stage. And so, we just we did our own little version, and I think it was really important, and it really works beautifully. So, yeah.
You said this very interesting thing in an interview. You said, we're sort of a funny department in that we have so much run up, we do so much pre-production, and then we leave it, and it's almost like you're handing over the keys. What was hard to leave behind?
Do you know what? Like, so often on my movies, I actually have this thing where I'm quite happy to hand over, see everybody, take it on and just go with it. And then because we have to keep moving, we have to be ahead. I don't tend to have an emotional response to my sets, but on Hamnet, I absolutely did. Like, I felt incredibly connected to those sets. And so, well, I mean, what was really good about it was we were at a studio. So even though we were working ahead and I would be in my office, I could still walk down and, visit the back lot and see what was going on. But I don't know if it was because we grew gardens or something. There was something about those sets, they had a life that I haven't really encountered in the same way. There was an emotional connection that I haven't had. And it wasn't just me, it was like the whole crew. We all felt very connected to this temporary dwelling that is no longer there.
But it's on film, so you can always visit
it's
it.
on film. I know. And thank goodness. And in my camera roll, there's lots of camera roll.
My guest has been Fiona Crombie. She's the Oscar-nominated production designer for Hamnet. It was part of our Big Picture series, this interview, recognizing the talent behind the camera this Oscar season. Thank you for your time, Fiona.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.